Marriage is hard and hard work of both. It can be fragile and fall apart in a second, or it can be strong and then nothing will crush it. Unfortunately, due to frequent betrayals, people stop believing other people. Okay, it's Wednesday, 11:30 a.m., and I'm parked right across from the Piccolo Motel. I've been waiting for my wife of 3.5 years to show up. From what I've learned, she's supposed to meet Glenn Eversham in room 145 at noon. Glenn is an old high school boyfriend of hers, and someone I know pretty well. In fact, up until recently, Glenn was one of my friends. But isn't that how these things often go? Glenn was Ellie's first true love. Ellie is supposed to be my wife, but I'm not sure about that anymore. They dated throughout high school. He's the one who took her virginity right after we graduated. Yeah, I was part of the group that night when he shared the story. I still remember him boasting about how he got her. He had a big 4x4 Chrysler truck, long bed, extended cab. He'd added a cap over the bed and kept blankets and other random stuff in the back of the cab or the bed itself. Glenn was always prepared. Yes, this guy told us all about how he did it. He shared this story one evening after we finished work. It was in the summer, right after our graduation. We hung out behind the tavern. It was called Whiplash back then. Since then, it has changed ownership 3 or 4 times, each time under a new name. Now it's a furniture store. I can still hear his voice as if it was yesterday. He said something like, "I met her after the prom." She changed out of her prom dress at her cousin's house. She was wearing a black Harley-Davidson t-shirt and these very short cropped jeans. She looked amazing. Long brown curly hair flowing down her back, big green eyes with eyelashes that seemed endless, and of course a beautiful figure. I told her we were going to Jed Nelson's after-graduation party. But first I wanted to drop by for a few minutes. I told her that I wanted to tell her something. I kind of hinted that I was going to ask her to marry me. She was already on edge, so it wasn't difficult for me to add illegal substances to her beer. In a few minutes, she was ready to rock and roll. At first, she tried to stop me, but she couldn't. Dude, I really got what I wanted. But then she just sat on the blanket and cried. She didn't say a word, just tears. I realized that I had lost. Eventually, she looked at me and asked me what I wanted to say. I completely forgot, so I told her that I had enlisted in the Navy and would be leaving at the end of next week. I asked her to wait for me. She stopped crying and said she would think about it. After that, I took her home, kissed her goodbye, and left. Then I got on the bus and left the city. We never made it to Jed's party. I remember him telling us this ridiculous story. I was there standing on the outskirts, as always. It broke my heart when I heard that. Glenn, Ellie, and I all grew up together, attending the same elementary, middle, and high schools. Glenn was the quintessential all-American guy. He had the charm, the money, the athletic talent, and, of course, the attention of all the girls. The funny thing is, he never really did much with all of that. He tried out for the football team but got cut. He tried basketball, didn't make it. He even gave baseball a shot but couldn't hit. He always had an excuse. In football, the coach was a jerk. In basketball, the smaller guys kept elbowing him in sensitive spots. And in baseball, the umpires called strikes that he swore should have been balls. But still, he always got the girls. He was voted prom king our senior year, and in the yearbook, he was named most likely to be remembered. As for me, I tried out for sports, too. Oh, by the way, I'm Wyatt Templeton. I made the soccer team. I skipped basketball but made the volleyball team, and in the spring I was on the varsity lacrosse team all 4 years. I guess it all came down to body type. Glenn was a big, strong guy who lifted weights and stayed in shape. Meanwhile, I've always been skinny and couldn't keep up with the bigger guys in football. But I could run, and when winter came, The coach figured out I could jump too, which landed me a spot on the volleyball team. Lacrosse, though, that was my thing. I played midfield. Yeah, Glenn got the girls, and somehow he also got all the attention. As for me, I just collected a bunch of letters. Glenn spent his high school years mastering the art of partying, something I wasn't particularly skilled at. My parents had 5 kids, so owning my own car was never in the cards. While I didn't go on many dates, I could always borrow my mom's beat-up old Cavalier whenever I needed a car. Did Glenn join the Navy? Of course not. Nobody would have believed that. After high school, Glenn went straight to Penn State thanks to his parents' money. I, on the other hand, focused on academics and earned a partial scholarship to the local state university. It didn't get me very far, though. I had to agree to teach in-state for 3 years, which led me to become a public school teacher. Being a teacher is basically like taking a vow of poverty. Not sure why I've stuck with it. Maybe it's because I like working with kids. Meanwhile, Glenn graduated from Penn, went to law school, and ended up at a big law firm in the city. He says he's making piles of money now. 5, maybe 10 times more than I do. I glance at my watch. 11:40. It won't be long now. Soon I'll know one way or another if I still have a wife and a family. This is awful. Really awful. Glenn went off to Penn State and I stayed behind. I'd always had a thing for Ellie Colleen Templeton, formerly Cochran. Ellie graduated and attended community college, where she took up some computer programming classes and learned all sorts of software stuff. I never got any of that. To me, computers are like cars. I know where the gas goes, how to start it, and if something's wrong, as long as it's not the brakes, I just turn up the radio when I hear something I don't like. Oh, sure, I've read all the books and brochures about car maintenance. I know how they work, but fixing cars is like plumbing to me. Trying to fix it just makes things worse. I recall when we first moved into our house. Ellie needed a dishwasher, along with a new sink and countertop. I researched the requirements, purchased the necessary hardware, and decided to handle the installation myself. It shouldn't have been too difficult. All I had to do was turn off the water, use a tool to cut back the pipes, solder in new ones, and we'd be good to go. I gave it a shot. I really did. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get the copper tubing to stop leaking. Ellie called her dad, Daddy, and he came over to fix it. I remember Daddy giving me a pat on the shoulder and complimenting my effort. Ellie brewed a pot of coffee, and we all enjoyed a cup while she expressed how proud she was of me for making the attempt. I felt embarrassed. I just couldn't seem to get anything right. Yet, in some way, I also felt good. I appreciated the praise. Glenn had gone off to Penn State, where he made a name for himself as the president of his fraternity and a cheerleader for the Nittany Lions. I managed to make my own mark, too. After my freshman year, I made the dean's list every semester while juggling part-time jobs throughout the year. Every summer, Glenn would come home. He spent his summers at the beach, surfing and hooking up with just about every girl he encountered. As for me, I had my own goals. I had been trying to ask Ellie out for a while. It was the summer between our freshman and sophomore years. We had always been friends, just chatting and hanging out since we were kids. To be honest, I had always loved her. I kissed her once when we were in high school. I remember she blushed, and I almost lost it. The thought of me having the guts to kiss Ellie Cochran felt like climbing Mount Everest. She blushed, but then kissed me back. Afterward, she made me promise not to tell Glenn, which left me feeling a bit down. I had almost done something reckless. Just before she made me promise, I was about to tell her I loved her. What an idiot I was. And then there was my big date with Ellie. She finally agreed to go out with me. Well, more like I finally worked up the courage to ask her, and she said yes. There was this fancy seafood restaurant way out in the countryside called the Seaman's Harvest. I thought it would be special to take her there, and afterward we could head back to the city to see a play. Cats was playing in town, and I thought it would be a pretty cool idea. Remember when I mentioned I didn't know much about cars? Well, I had bought a used Hyundai. It had a lot of miles on it, but the salesman assured me it ran perfectly, saying it still had another 100,000 miles left. I bought it, and for the first 2 weeks it ran great. I picked Ellie up one night, and she looked stunning. She was wearing a light blue mini dress, skin-tone nylons, and high heels. Ellie's about 5 feet 6 inches, and I'm 5 feet 11 inches, but with her heels, she was slightly taller than me. I felt a little awkward, but then again, I always felt a bit nervous around Ellie. Normally I'm good with words, but with her, I could barely finish a sentence. I'd get lost in her big green eyes and just freeze. She'd smile, and I'd melt. I went to her door, chatted with her parents while Ellie grabbed her wrap, then walked her to the car and helped her in. Everything was going well until about 2/3 of the way to the restaurant when my new used Hyundai broke down. It just stopped. I popped the hood, got out, checked under the car, and just stood there, completely clueless. Ellie got out too, took a look underneath, and gave me a smile. "Broken, huh?" she said. I had a reservation at a nice restaurant, and I even had 2 $60 tickets for cats, but now the car was dead. I looked back at her. "Yeah, looks like it." She pulled out her cell phone and called her dad. He showed up about 30 minutes later, tied an old tire to the front of his car, and pushed us back to her house. I sat in my car, steering while he pushed, and Ellie rode with him. I felt like a total failure. When we got back, we had barbecue with her family, then watched an old movie on TV. Later, as we watched Robert Redford kiss Jane Fonda, Ellie told me she had already seen Cats. Glenn had taken her to New York to see it on Broadway. That was my big date with Ellie. I glanced at my watch again, 11:45. I started to question what I was doing. Deep down, I always knew Glenn would come for what he believed was his. I just hoped that Ellie had left him behind for good. I guess I was wrong about that. I should have seen it coming. I remember when Ellie and I got married and how I convinced her to say yes. After that first date that didn't go well, she agreed to give it another shot. It was later that summer, when all the town fairs were in full swing. I'll never forget the year before, when Ellie won our town's beauty contest during our senior year. She was crowned queen on the second night of the carnival. It rained that evening, and Glenn was supposed to be there, but he stayed at the beach. I was her escort instead. I knew I only got the job because Glenn wasn't around. She really wanted him there. She never said it, but a guy can tell these things. Like I said, it rained. No, it poured. Everything got completely soaked. Ellie had packed regular clothes, but for the parade and the coronation, she had bought this beautiful white mini dress. The moment the sky opened up, she was drenched in minutes. The dress was made of some thin linen or cotton material, and when it got wet, it turned practically see-through. There she was, up on the platform in front of everyone. I played dumb, ran off the platform, and grabbed a raincoat from an older man in the crowd. Older folks always seemed to be prepared. I rushed back up to cover Ellie as quickly as I could. But the platform was slick with rain, and in my haste, I slipped, went head over heels, and landed flat on my back in the wet grass below. I don't know what hurt more, my body or my pride. I just sat there in the wet grass, too embarrassed to get back up. Ellie sat on her throne and accepted the crown and scepter. She never looked at me, but had this huge grin on her face. All I can say is how graceful and beautiful she appeared, but I also felt like she was sort of laughing at me. Later, after the rain stopped, we walked around the grounds. Her dress had dried, and no one could see through it anymore. Meanwhile, my tan levies were covered in grass stains, and my t-shirt was smeared with mud. She looked like the town princess she was, and I looked like the town fool. We wandered around where the games were. We stopped by the pit beef and French fry stand, where I bought her some pit beef, a funnel cake, and some ice cream too. Later, I drove her home. She thanked me and kissed me on the cheek. I guess that was sort of a date. We went on a few more dates after my car fiasco. Nothing too fancy, just movies, a picnic, a trip to the state park for a swim and some hot dogs. I thought that summer was special. But toward the end of it, Glenn showed up for about a week. He took Ellie out every night. As far as she was concerned, I no longer existed. Glenn Eversham. I hate that son of a bitch. My watch showed 11:50. There is very little time left. How did I convince Ellie to marry me? It still remains a mystery. Everyone knows about single dogs that get attached to one person and remain faithful for life. I guess you could say that I'm a little bit the same, but with women. Of course, I dated other girls, but I always found myself comparing them to Ellie, and Ellie always came first. Men have their own personal moments. I do not know who other guys are thinking about at such moments. Maybe movie stars. But for me, it's always been Ellie. Throughout my life, when I let my thoughts flow in this direction, it was Ellie who occupied my thoughts. People dream, especially men, and in my dreams, whether I imagine myself as the hero who won or the one who stood up, Ellie was always there. She has always been a heroine and always impeccable. How did I convince her to marry me? After our first summer break, Ellie and I dated on and off until my senior year. I never had much money, so our dates were always inexpensive. We did things like going to demolition derbies, tractor pulls, carnivals, apple festivals, minor league baseball games, the state fair, and horse shows. Ellie's really passionate about horseback riding. I enjoy it too, but for her it's more like a way of life than just a hobby. She always had her own horse, though I could never afford one. Glenn always had one. Oh, and I took her to church every chance I got. Sure, it was a cheap date, but it gave me the opportunity to show her my character. We're both Methodists, and as they say, which I believe, all Methodists love to do is sing and eat. I do know one thing for sure. Ellie has an amazing voice. Now that we're married, she's part of the church choir, and she looks absolutely angelic in her choir robe. I can't believe this is real. I proposed to Ellie during the fall of my final year of college. She had already graduated and was working for a local software company. Her job involved traveling around the county, fixing broken computers. Ellie had also started programming and even began creating her own games. Don't ask me to explain any of that. I've already made my stance on technology clear. Meanwhile, Glenn was finishing his senior year at Penn State. Throughout college, he was a constant source of frustration for me. He'd be away most of the time, but whenever he came home, he'd ask Ellie out, and she'd agree. It always made me feel like I was just the fallback option. Glenn returned home for Thanksgiving that year, and this time he brought a girlfriend. Her name was Marcia Ashcroft, and wow, was she stunning. Long blonde hair, an amazing figure, captivating hazel eyes. She was gorgeous. Glenn introduced her to his parents and friends, announcing that this was the woman he was going to marry. They had even set a date for the wedding, right after he graduated. Everyone joined in to congratulate the happy couple. Ellie gave both Glenn and Marcia congratulatory kisses, and I did the same. Well, I shook Glenn's hand. Once Glenn and Marcia made their exit, I got to work. I figured finally, no more Glenn Eversham, and now it was my chance. Sure, there were other guys, but I was pretty confident that after Glenn, I was Ellie's top choice. I headed to the mall, bought a ring, and started planning my proposal. I thought I'd do it at her place. Her parents had a big modern house with an awesome basement clubroom. I figured I'd get her downstairs where I could pop the question. Her brother was in high school, so I assumed he'd be out for the night. It was a Friday. I got Ellie to agree to head downstairs so we could play some video games. That was always an easy sell since she usually won. We went down, with her parents and brother still upstairs. We made our way to the game room and sat on the couch with the big TV right across from us. I knelt down and took out the ring box. I opened it and showed the ring, saying, "Ellie." She interrupted me by exclaiming, "Oh no, you don't." I was a little puzzled, thinking that she was going to reject me. I muttered, "Well, Ellie sat me down on the couch and said, "Kiss me, you idiot." So I kissed her. We were there together on the couch in the playroom in the basement of her parents' house, and her mom, dad, and brother were upstairs. I distinctly heard their conversation. That night marked my becoming a man. I was 21 years old and had never been with a woman before. It was the most amazing and wonderful night of my life, and I believed that it was the same with her. We lay there side by side, embracing each other. I kept kissing her face and head while she ran her hands up and down my sides. After some time, we sat up. Ellie looked at me with a serious expression and said, "Show me the ring." I found my pants, retrieved the ring from its box, and held it out to her. She extended her left hand, at least I assumed it was her left hand, and said, "Put it on." I did. The diamond appeared small, just a bit over a quarter carat, but it seemed to shimmer and glow in the soft light of the bedside lamp. She turned her hand from side to side and looked at me, saying, "This signifies no more, for you." Confused, I asked, "What do you mean?" She gave me a serious look and said, "From now on, it's just you and me, no one else." I thought to myself, there has never been anyone else, at least not for me. I told her, "Honestly, Ellie, you've always been the only one." She smiled and replied, "I know. It's been the same for me too." Back then, I didn't fully grasp what she meant by her too. Even now, I'm not entirely certain. A few minutes later, we got dressed and went upstairs to meet her mom and dad. Ellie showed them the ring, but they didn't seem particularly happy. They looked more relieved than joyful, and I once thought I understood why, but now I'm not so sure. That was the start of it. Ellie and I were officially a couple. We announced it to all our friends, and everyone admired her ring. Everyone was thrilled for us, including Glenn. This all took place in November. We were young, in love, and unaware of potential complications. Ellie had a good job, and she could often work from home. As for me, I was on the right path. I had majored in math and education. With a high demand for math teachers and my strong grades and sports background, landing a teaching job in the county seemed like a guaranteed outcome. We had planned for a June wedding, but we soon encountered a small complication. When two people in love are intimate regularly without precautions, certain outcomes become inevitable. By mid-January, we discovered we had a little complication on the way, due to arrive in about 7 months. We moved the wedding date up to March. Our first little complication arrived in July, and we named her Jenny. The same week Jenny was born, I secured a job teaching middle school math with the county and was also asked to assist with the girls' junior varsity soccer team at the high school. My watch read 11:55. Any moment now, my whole world, my dreams, my hopes for a happy ending, could all come crashing down. Ellie would arrive and meet Mr. Big Shot Glenn Eversham. I'd gone through all her emails. I knew exactly what was coming. Those emails, those damn emails. Why had she left them open? Why hadn't she secured her accounts? She had passwords and secret accounts everywhere. I barely understood any of it. None of this had to happen. I didn't need to know. Did she leave them open on purpose? Did she want me to find out? Was she that unhappy with me? Was I really such a bad husband? I swear I tried. We didn't have much money, but I tried to make up for that. I paid attention to her. Every day I told her how much I loved her and to give her everything money couldn't buy. Was it about the Intimax? I don't think I'm a bad lover, but who knows? Ellie's the only woman I've ever been with. I mean it. Ellie is the only one for me. I never wanted to hurt her or do anything that could be considered disrespectful. I have always tried to be gentle, firm, but kind. I watched this movie with Meg Ryan and learned that women can fake contentment, but in Ellie's case, I'm sure I know when I made her happy. I always did my best to make her enjoy herself. There were times when she wasn't interested in intimacy, like when she was pregnant with Jenny and Craig, and her back hurt a lot. I gave her a back massage. I love touching her. She has everything I've ever wanted. Please, God, don't let this happen. Was I a bad father? Jenny is 3 years old, and Craig is still a baby. Of course, I probably scream sometimes, but don't all men raise their voices from time to time? I take care of my children. I read Jenny fairy tales. I ride her on my back. I try to do all the things that my parents did for me. I just want to be a good father like my dad and Ellie's dad. I work hard around the house. I help with cooking, clean the dishes, mow the lawn, tend to the flowers, vacuum, and do whatever she asks. I do it because I want her to be happy. Whenever Ellie feels down, I try to be there for her. I don't go off to bars or anything like that. I kiss her every chance I get, and I love holding her in my arms when we're in bed. About 2 months ago, I first noticed her special Glenn account. I wasn't suspicious at the time, just curious. So I opened it. Now I wish I hadn't. Glenn, that bastard Eversham, asked if he could see her. He said he missed her, was lonely and unhappy in his marriage, and needed someone to talk to. Damn, I thought. What a sneaky snake. Then I read Ellie's reply. Initially, she basically told him to leave her alone. She didn't use any curse words, just said that she was married, busy, and if he was unhappy, maybe he should talk to Marcia, or if not his wife, then perhaps a counselor. But he kept emailing her. He continued complaining and pleading. He said he needed someone, and that she was the only one who truly understood him. Ellie resisted at first. This went back and forth for what I counted as 4 exchanges. Then Ellie changed. She started reminiscing about when they were in high school, the fun they had before he got engaged to Marcia. She began recalling things they'd done when I was barely involved. In short, she started breaking my heart. Oh no, Glenn is here. He's at the motel room door. I slouched way down in my car so he wouldn't see me. Damn it. Why am I even worried? I'm all the way across the parking lot. I kept watching him as he looked around. I saw him go into the room I expected, room 145. He opened the door again. Wait. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and started talking to someone. I bet it's Ellie. I bet he's telling her he's there. Oh no. My life is falling apart right in front of me. Please, Ellie, don't show up. Why the hell am I so concerned? I've read her emails. I know how excited she is about this. She's already betrayed me, if not physically, then emotionally for sure. If she doesn't break her vows today, she will eventually. This is devastating. Reading it on a screen is awful, but seeing it, actually seeing it happen, right in front of me, in real life, that's a completely different level of pain. Damn it, it's noon. Any moment now. Look, I have 2 kids and a third on the way. Jenny was born in July, 3 years and 2 months ago. Craig arrived last October, and lately Ellie's said she's missed 2 periods. That's 3 kids. 3 kids with a lying, cheating woman. No, I can't say that. Ellie would never... But there he is. Right over there. It's those emails, those damned emails. I wish I'd never read them. I have to give her credit. At first, she resisted him, then she seemed interested, and eventually, she started talking about his wife, Marcia. Ellie kept bringing up his wife. She said thoughtful things like, "What about your wife? Why do you want to do this to her? Wouldn't it be better to talk to your wife? Marcia loves you. I know you should talk to her. Glenn, you should say something to your wife. He always had an excuse. He said Marcia didn't understand him. He said he never loved her, not like he loved Ellie. He even claimed Marcia was cheating on him. I'll give Ellie this much. She fought Marcia's battles for her. She couldn't have done it better if it had been Marcia herself. But in the end, it didn't matter. Last week, Ellie gave in. She agreed to meet him, and now here we are. My marriage, my life, and very likely Glenn and Marcia's marriage are all on the verge of collapse. Look, I haven't been sitting around doing nothing. I talked to my dad about all of this. He agrees with me. He believes, just like I do, that when a man and a woman get married, they give themselves to each other. My heart, my soul, my life's treasure, and even my body aren't mine anymore. They belong to Ellie. Ellie should understand I don't want to control her, but she made the same promise to me. What did she say? No more, no more. Her heart, soul, and body belong to me just as mine do to her. She can't just give away what's supposed to be mine. She can't make me a fool, a cuckold. I won't stand for it. I'll pay alimony and child support for the rest of my life. I'll live in poverty, but I won't be betrayed. I glance at my watch. It's 12:15. Glenn has already come by 3 times. Ellie's late. I'm wondering, and I bet he's wondering too. I silently hope she doesn't show up. If she doesn't, I'll confront her. I'll bring up the emails. I'll try to make her understand. We could go to counseling. God, I love her so much. I'd rather die than live without her. Like I've thought before, I'm a one-woman man. I can't imagine life without her. Being without her would feel like death. Please, Ellie, just stay home, don't come. But what if she does show up? I know what that means. If she comes, it's over. I won't accept it. I'll move out. We'll divorce. I won't live like some weak, pathetic man. That's just not who I am. Oh, please, Ellie, don't come. Jesus, it's 12:20. This is driving me crazy. I have to find out. I need to call. I grab my phone and dial Ellie's number. It barely rings once before she picks up. Yes. Oh, it's you, Wyatt. Hang up the phone. Ellie, what are you doing? Where are you? Wyatt, what do you mean? You know where I am. I'm at home. Jenny's in her playpen in the living room. Craig's upstairs asleep, and I'm ironing one of your shirts. There's a pause, and then she asks, Where are you? Shouldn't you be in class right now? I reply as firmly as I can, No, Ellie, I'm in my car. I'm parked in the lot across from the Piccolo Motel. I've been watching Glenn Eversham going in and out of room 145 like he's waiting for someone. Tell me, Ellie, are you sure you're at home? I listen. There's a brief silence on the other end. Damn it, I've caught her. Ellie says, Wyatt, I want you to hang up the phone. Stay where you are. You know I love you. You know I'd never do anything to hurt you or risk what we have together. Trust me. Just wait. Call me and let me know when you see something. Now hang up the damn phone. I did what she told me. I hung up. All right, I thought. I'll give her all the rope she needs. The second hand on my watch kept ticking. It was 12:30. Something was happening at the Piccolo. What now? I watched as 2 people approached the door to room 145. One of them was Marcia Eversham. I didn't know the other person, but he was a man. He had something tucked under his arm. He knocked on the door. Holy crap. Glenn opened it. The man handed him a large envelope. He said something, but I couldn't make out what. Marcia stood behind him. The man started walking away, and so did Marcia. Glenn suddenly took off, chasing his wife. What the hell just happened? I decided to call Ellie back. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ellie. She picked up immediately. What did you see? Ellie, I saw some guy give Glenn a stack of papers. Marcia was there too. I watched Glenn running after her across the parking lot. Ellie asked, "What do you think you saw?" I paused, and then it hit me. "Ellie, you tell me." "Wyatt, what you saw was the end of a very unhappy marriage." I was stunned. "You mean—" Ellie cut me off. "You can come home now." "And?" "Come home, honey. I'll explain everything when you get here." The denouement, in the third person, fittingly. Wyatt had taken the entire day off, so he headed straight home. Ellie was there waiting when he walked in. He arrived just in time to see Ellie's mom loading their toddler daughter and infant son into her minivan. They waved to each other. He stepped through the front door of their home, a fixer-upper, the kind of place that happy young couples with growing families often buy. The house, the yard, and the furnishings all spoke of a shortage of funds, but the home also radiated the kind of love and warmth that only a young family like theirs could have. Wyatt entered. "Do you want to tell me what happened today?" Ellie took his hand and led him to their sofa, actually, her parents' old basement couch, the same one where she had once given him her greatest treasure, the treasure he had gifted her just a few years earlier. She walked him over. "Sit down, sweetie." Wyatt sat on the sofa. Ellie knelt on the floor at his feet and began, "I'm sorry, my love. You weren't supposed to see those emails. I guess that's what all of this is about?" He responded, "Yes, I didn't mean to, but I read—" She gently squeezed his knee. "Let me explain. A few weeks ago I started getting emails from Glenn. He wanted to see me, and you can imagine what he was after." Wyatt nodded. "I tried to get him to stop, but he kept emailing me, so I came up with an idea. I called his wife, Marcia. He and Marcia have been struggling for a while. Glenn hasn't been the best husband." Ellie squeezed Wyatt's knee again. "He's not like you, darling." Wyatt leaned in closer to his wife. She gently pushed him back. "Marcia wants children, but Glenn doesn't. Marcia needs a reliable man, not someone who runs around. She and I devised a plan. What you've been reading is essentially a dump account. For the past couple of weeks, both Marcia and I have been receiving his emails simultaneously, but it's been Marcia who has been replying, not me." Wyatt leaned forward again. "So—" "Let me finish, sweetie," she urged him back again. "Marcia and I set this up. Oh, Marcia doesn't want to ruin him. Why would she? His income is her security, but she does want out. She wants to find someone she can trust and love. We've discussed it. She wants someone like you. What you witnessed today was Marcia's exit visa. I'm sorry I never thought to mention it. It just didn't occur to me that you'd find it significant. I never imagined you'd think, 'Oh, my darling, you and I are a together team. In fact, I'm already working on our third baby.'" Wyatt felt angry and upset, confused and torn inside. "Ellie, all my life, I've felt like I was number 2 to you. Throughout high school and college, it always seemed like Glenn held the top spot in your heart. I was always second best. I became so scared. I thought I had finally lost you to him." Ellie climbed up and began unbuttoning her husband's shirt. "Wyatt, you silly, wonderful man. Do you remember our high school days?" Wyatt, wiping away a tear, nodded. "Do you recall all those ridiculous soccer games and those silly lacrosse matches? I can't stand soccer. I really dislike lacrosse. Lacrosse is dull, but soccer is completely boring. Do you think I was there for every game over 4 years because I enjoyed it? I was there just to see you. I remember when you looked up and saw me. I was always watching you, wasn't I?" Wyatt blinked back another tear and nodded. "Yes, I suppose so." Ellie went on, "I can't forget our first real date. Someone sold you a real lemon. You had everything arranged perfectly, the nice restaurant, the tickets to Cats. Everything seemed flawless, and then your car broke down. I felt so sorry for you. I just wanted to wrap you in my arms. You looked so vulnerable. My dad admired you because you let him assist you. He realized then what I had already known. Wyatt nodded. I thought... Ellie gently stroked his cheek. You were wrong, Wyatt. I've always loved you. You have always been the only one in my heart. Do you remember carnivals? Do you remember when I was elected queen of our city? You were so brave, but at the same time a little clumsy. You bought me a raincoat, but then you fell off the platform. You were amazing. Maybe a little silly, but still amazing. Every girl in town wanted to be with you, but I'm the only one who got you. They didn't do it. Wyatt hesitated. Of course. Were you and Glenn at the prom? Ellie started. Did you really believe that screamer? You know, when I had my first experience. You were there the night it happened, right here on this very couch. Wyatt, it's always been you. Just you, and no one else. Wyatt moved over. Your parents. That night? So what? Wyatt, do you remember the night you gave me this ring? She raised her left hand. He nodded. Do you remember the look on my parents' faces? Yes, I remember. Wyatt, they were happy. You saw the happiness and relief on their faces. We've all been waiting for you for 3 years. Ever since you went to college, Mom and Dad and I have been talking about this. For a while it seemed like I should propose to you, but in the end you did. So, that night, when your brother started coming down, darling, my parents knew. My brother didn't know, but they told him pretty quickly. Wyatt, I love you. I've always loved you. I loved you in elementary school, middle school, high school, and even when you went to college. But damn it, Wyatt, you were so shy. He asked, So what now? She smiled and said, After I finish here, we'll go upstairs. You're going to make love to me. Then we'll get up, get dressed, and go to my parents' house. We'll have some chili. And after that, well, we'll live happily ever after, just like in those Hallmark movies. And they did it.